Okay, so everyone has a packet in front of them,
So I
correct?
guess we'll start, I guess Ms. Hall may not make it tonight. Everybody ready to start?
Yes.
All right.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. So we'll call the meeting to order. Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, meeting night. And we can have a roll call.
Emma Hall. Satana Warren.
Present.
Sam Hudson. Ivy Chandler.
Here.
Emma Kennard.
Present.
Mary Alice Adams.
Present.
Miguel Clark.
Here.
James Childs.
Okay. So first up on our agenda is the approval of the agenda, is that right? Or-
If I may, apparently this might not be a regular agenda item for this board. Many boards do have that. I do want to clarify, the point of this is not to add something last minute that we haven't discussed or agreed upon should be on there, but it's just an opportunity to review the agenda, that, it makes sense for what's supposed to be on there. If for some reason there was a late addition that it's already been agreed would be added, but came out after the packet, this would provide the opportunity. Likewise, if there was something that was on here when the packets went out, but for some reason it needs to be delayed, that could be an opportunity for that.
Excuse me, is there anything, because I missed, I think, one or two, is there anything that has been added that wasn't on at the last meeting? Is there anything in here that was added?
You mean as an agenda item?
Yes.
Just this approval of the agenda. But as far as the specific agenda items, that changes month to month. So yes, what's on here would be different than last month. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, I guess, I just want to not have a surprise of something that, was, 2 or 3 meetings or so ago, and it's here.
So this exact packet is exactly what was emailed to you. There's no change from what was emailed to you last week.
Okay.
So I don't know, we haven't had this, so I don't necessarily think we need it, but I guess we can ask other people's opinion if we need point C to be on here, go forward. Go ahead, Commissioner Adams.
Thank you. I think it's a wonderful idea because sometimes we get off point of talking about some things later in the meeting when we really needed to, or ask for a specific thing to be added. I think that it would, we can just bypass it. But to just have it on the agenda for just in case would be wonderful. It's just like, several times just recently, we've asked some people that wanted to address and ask some questions that would have allowed us to amend the agenda.
Are you talking about members of the public? Because that would be
Members of the
appropriate in
public,
public comment.
Well, okay, but
So again, point of clarification, brand new, never discussed items, that probably would not be appropriate to just add last minute. It's more for the case of something happened after the packet went out and we know we want to add it, to have a formal means to do so.
perfect scenario.
Okay, so.
Does not need to be
But if
here.
people, everyone thinks we does, I don't have a strong opinion, so we can keep it if that's what the board wants.
But even if the packets were going out and you have some last minute, then that should be allowed either, so I'm okay with either way it goes.
Does anyone else have any opinion on if we need to add, the approval of the agenda is something we normally don't have on our agenda. Does anyone else have a comment on if we should keep it on here or if we can go back to regular? Anyone else on the board?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Ivy.
If I'm understanding correctly, if I called you an hour before this meeting and I said, I need to get this, we discussed this before, but we need to get it on the agenda. And you say, well, the agenda's already gone out. And then you said, but we can add it based on this C. Is Is that what this is for those, you said last minute items? So I wanna get some on the agenda that's not on the agenda that went out.
I think in your scenario where it's something you've discussed before but isn't formally on there and you want to have some discussion be held formally, then that might be appropriate. If it's a brand new item, then, maybe you bring it up during your member comments that this is something you'd like to have discussed at the next meeting.
To reduce any confusion, I'd say no.
I would say I would remove it, because I just think it's gonna be a point of confusion, and it's gonna be so many things brought up, none of us are gonna have time to pre-read it. But again, I don't necessarily feel super strongly if someone really, really felt like it was necessary,
I mean, even a last minute agenda item could be discussed and brought back forth upon a brief discussion to the next meeting with approval of it being on the agenda.
Or you could just say that in member comments and she could bring it back.
Usually I see boards use it more to remove an item. For example, something was placed on here, we're not ready to discuss. They might say, let's strike item C, a developer was gonna be here, now they can't, or something like that. But if this board doesn't feel like that's necessary, we can remove it from further
Whose idea
agendas.
was this?
Mine. It came up last month where, there was a project application and there was some back and forth communication, whether that should have appeared that month or not. There wasn't an opportunity to formally approve the agenda. That's where the thought came from that, if we had that, there could have been a formal discussion of whether that item was on the agenda or not.
Okay, so I think the consensus would be we don't have to have that on our agenda. So we'll go ahead and move on to our next item, review of the minutes from April 11th.
Motion to approve.
Anyone support? Okay. If you can call for the,
Warren,
yes.
Chandler,
Yes.
Kennard,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Childs. I'm sorry. Hudson. No, he's not.
All right.
You approve it?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, next up, we have communications, and there's none.
Mr. Clark needs to vote.
Oh, I did, okay, I apologize. Clark.
Yes.
Motion carries, Madam Chair.
Okay, and next up on our agenda is communications, but there's none here. So we're gonna move on to public comments. So if anyone in the public wants to comment. No comments? Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and move on if there's no public comments. Committee reports. I don't think anyone's here, so let's move on. Okay, so next up is our treasurer's report, page 9. Sorry.
Madam Chair and authority members, I direct you to page 10 of your packet, which includes your balance sheet for month ended April. It should be page 10. You'll note that there's roughly $426,000 in your checking account and roughly $532,000 in your local remediation revolving fund account, for a grand total cash on hand of roughly $958,000. You've got about $2,500 in accounts payable. If you turn the page to page 11, you'll see your income statement through the end of that same month, April, showing about $331,000 in income, about $263,000 in expenses, resulting in a net income of $68,000. This number, I'll point out, is a little bit lower than what we would have anticipated. And the reason it's lower is because you paid out of your local remediation revolving fund about $150,000 in this fiscal year. And that was to reimburse an entity that had entered into a reimbursement agreement with you for activities they conducted along the Main Street corridor, more specifically the old Ship Canal area. I'll direct you to page 12 Payables listing. You've got invoice from Landmark for April's advisory services for $2,468.75. I'll note that this was for primarily the calculation of your winter tax capture and disbursement. You've got invoices from Plant Moran for their March and April accounting totaling $900 exactly, for a grand total of $3,368.75 in your payables listing. Madam Chair, authority members, we'd be looking for approval of the financial statements and approval of the payables listing. Thank you.
Motion to approve.
Support. Question.
Motion to approve, did I hear
Yes,
that?
sorry.
Thank you.
Support and then discussion.
Adam.
I really don't remember, but did we not pay Plant Moran last month? There's two payments here.
It wasn't on our,
Okay, I don't remember, but you should. I trust that, thank you.
yes.
If I may, Treasurer Warren, the reason why the Plant Moran for March was not on last month's, it's because the way the meeting falls so close to beginning of the month, I received it after the packet, so it wasn't put in there.
Okay,
And so now we have both this month. For example, you'll see there's not a Fishbeck invoice for last month. It's because it wasn't able to be generated in time to get the packets out. So
everything was late, I remember that now. Okay, thank you.
Did anyone else have? Okay, so, no more questions?
No.
Okay, so we
Question.
can call for the question.
Is this motion is for the financial report specifically? Or are we
Also
taking them
for
together for both of
for
them?
both.
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you. Clark,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Kennard,
Yes.
Hudson,
Yes.
Chandler,
Yes.
Warren.
Yes.
Motion carries. Madam Chair, also under Treasurer's Report and committee members, item number 3 is a rewrite of a check that was authorized and actually written at your last meeting. We had received a reimbursement request from Blue Star 6, which is one of the Prairie entities. This authority approved that reimbursement at a prior meeting. The check was written last month, but it was written to Blue Star 9. It's a complicated situation only in the sense that the reimbursement agreement has 9 different entities that are included within it. We took the first entity off the list of that reimbursement agreement, and it wasn't the entity that had actually incurred the expenses. Prairie brought that to our attention and asked that the check be returned and that it be reissued to the entity that actually incurred the expenses. And they have returned that check. It's been given to the finance director. She has voided it, and she has reissued another check to the correct entity, Blue Star 6. So as a administrative matter, we're looking for your approval to reissue that check.
Same amount.
Same amount exactly, $19,164.46.
Okay, so they were removed, the other property was removed from our,
No, there are 9 properties that are
Right.
included within one agreement
right,
because the agreement pertains to 9 separate parcels.
okay. Okay,
So do
And
we
that-
know how to clarify that go forward?
Yes, going forward, what we are going to do is we are going to issue the reimbursement check to the entity that submits the reimbursement agreement. Prairie will, whatever the entity is that incurred the expense within the Prairie organization, they will submit that reimbursement request specific to that entity. And we will write the check specific to that entity. So they have their bookkeeping straight. We can keep ours straight as well.
Okay. Mr. Hudson?
Am I correct to understand you to say that invoice we received is from Blue Star 6? We inadvertently wrote the check to Blue Star 9,
Correct.
okay? But that's what it reads on the invoice. and we have an agreement with that particular entity, it seems like the mistake was on us, not them.
Correct.
Correct, and the amount has already been approved, so it wouldn't be approving any expenditure, it's just reissuing the check for the name change. The development agreement is included in your packet that lists all of those entities.
So we need to make the motion to rewrite the check or,
Correct.
okay, so I make the motion to write the check to the correct entity.
Motion by Warren, supported by Clark.
Call for the question.
Adams.
Yes.
Kennard.
Yes.
Hudson.
Yes.
Chandler.
Yes.
Warren.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Next up on our agenda is old business, and the first point is 275 Pipestone.
If it pleases the authority, I would like to request that this be put back on the agenda for next month. I have some people from Chicago, that's going to take a look at some things. And the gentleman was supposed to call you, and I'm not sure if he has.
So what's on the agenda right now is a presentation of a memo I prepared based on what I was.
Did you speak with him?
No, in March, this board authorized me to reach out to Eagle to look at potential funding sources for the property. That has been done. This memo has been prepared.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the purpose is just to present it. The board can choose if any action needs to be taken after that. So I did reach out to Eagle. We don't have a lot of background information here. There's not any known contamination. They let me know that in order for them to expend grant funds, there needs to be known or likely presumed, some reason why we think there might be environmental contamination. They further clarified that, asbestos, lead paint, that's not enough. They're looking at soil and groundwater contamination primarily. So at this point in time, unless we have some information to believe there is contamination, they wouldn't be on support of a grant. If a phase 1 environmental site assessment is done and it identified some recognized environmental conditions, then maybe they would entertain a talk about support, but at this point they're not. Further in that March meeting, as it was proposed, maybe the authority would acquire this property. And, what did that look like if the authority was a property owner? So I have some things in this memo to, think about that. The first would be, does this property align with your goals? Is there a measure of economic development where it makes sense for the authority to purchase the property so that it's in a better position to support redevelopment? Sometimes cultural significance can be enough. That certainly is a factor. But what are you doing with the property? How long do you want to hold on to it? Are there certain zoning requirements? There wouldn't be, this is not a tax entity where you'd have to pay property taxes, but you would still have due care liability because you would be acquiring the property voluntarily. So what that means is if there is any environmental contamination, you have to make sure that nothing is being done that makes that situation worse, what we call exacerbating the situation. You have to make sure that if there are any direct contact issues that, you're prohibiting the public from accessing, for example, if there was contaminated soil, something like that. So essentially, you would be responsible for assessing what's there enough to understand your due care responsibilities. Any upkeep, maintenance of the property while you held on to it would be your responsibility. So it's certainly something the authority could do to acquire property if it's for economic development purposes, but those are the types of things you'd want to be thoughtful about.
Commissioner Adams?
Thank you. I'd just like to say thank you, Teresa. I appreciate that. And I just want my board members to know that I really appreciate Eagle's work on this too. That I've been working with our hub through the Justice 40 initiative And there's some federal funding that's also related as well as job training, and I'll be getting that information to you all. So, just expect it and appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Hudson?
Case in point, why are we as a board interested in becoming a landlord?
We're not.
So I think you weren't here last week or last month.
You're correct.
So basically, if you look at, I just have the page, okay, it's not, oh, page 26. So that's kind of what the memo was. Commissioner Adams brought up that question, and then you'll see if you go down how she has Treasurer Warren and my comments. I don't think we were thinking about it. I just think Commissioner Adams brought that up as a suggestion, but it was not voted on, or
Right.
it was just her suggestion, if that makes sense. Anyone else have any comments on 275 Pipestone? No? Okay, so we'll move on to point 2, the expenditure policy and form.
So if I may direct you to pages 28 and 29 of your packet. Last month at the April regular meeting, it was discussed, how does the board really go about if, for example, there was a conference you wanted to attend that would assist in your role as a Brownfield Redevelopment Authority member? What's the mechanism to get reimbursed for those costs? And staff was authorized to develop a policy and expenditure form, and essentially that's what this is. So the process that I have proposed here is that the board member would fill out this expenditure form. They would email that to myself. Alternately, it could also be dropped off at City Hall, and then I will review the form for completeness, and then it would be placed on the next meeting agenda for approval. So the way this form is set up, essentially there's 2 scenarios. One would be you're paying for that cost up front. You're asking for reimbursement, but you still would submit this form in advance to get approval of that. The second would be you're asking for approval and you also need a check up front to pay for those costs. So in both scenarios, it would be approved by the board as an eligible expense before incurred.
Okay, Mr. Hudson?
Mark, back in August or September of last year, gave you a draft of this same particular policy, because I think it's good that we should support any upgrade in, knowledge base of committee members. Can you tell me what happened to that?
Madam Chair? Certainly, and you're correct. I believe that was in August or September of last year, if I'm not mistaken. That was distributed in the next month's packet for discussion, and you were not in attendance in those ensuing meetings because of your travels. The chair chose not to take action on it. You weren't there to present it, and there didn't seem to be any interest in taking action on that item at that time. More recently, this issue came up again, as Teresa mentioned, and this is the work product that she was directed to create.
Now, in keeping with that, I think it's a great thing, but purpose should be maximized because we are stewards of public funds here. The policy that I was proposing had a little bit more accountability attached to it. So if you go to a conference, it's not necessary for everybody here to go, but the benefit should inure to this committee as a whole through the individual being responsible to report and give the information so that we can all gain, to maximum degree. Other than that, I see it as too proprietary to really be of any benefit to a committee this small. And if someone is not willing to to engage in that process, then they probably shouldn't be using our funds to go to a conference. So that was all incorporated in the draft that I gave you. I don't really see that in what is being discussed now from staff. So I think there are some things that we can do. No problem with what we have here, but let's make it work, okay, to the better. We don't have to go through the internal combustion engine. Let's go straight to the electric. So I think we can do that here in this case. Let's make it something that's going to have the maximum effect. But I'm all for it. I think it's great and needed.
Teresa.
If I may, are you asking that there's some sort of feedback? For example, if someone went to a conference, that they then would come back and share it with the board, what they learned?
Specifically, that is part of the policy. I do have a copy of that draft with me. I don't think it's that appropriate to be submitted in, for full discussion here, but, just for your education, I can present that to you, but those were the specific steps in the policy. How to go about it, how the funds are expended, provides a clear and transparent trail, because most times that's what precludes that individuals don't travel.
Okay.
Creates static, so
So
I think we just need details about.
I don't disagree. I think that would be fine. So if you happen to have a copy, if you could look at it and maybe we can incorporate it, I think that would be fine.
Mr. Hudson, I have that copy,
Okay.
and I can certainly forward that to Teresa, and she can perhaps extract out of it what you're looking for, what this
Make
board
it
is looking for.
available in its raw form to the board members.
It was back in October-ish, but we could do it again if that's the will of this group.
Sounds like that's what she was saying.
Yeah, Commissioner Adams.
Thank you, Chair. I think me and Ms. Cole probably the originals from 2002 that's been here, and it's been an honor to serve this community and see the growth that's taking place and to be a part of that decision making. We've gone across country and we always brought things back and shared it with the community because it had everything to do with exactly what we do, redevelop, and helping to put those things in place. It's been a long time since we've gone anywhere because there really hasn't been a need, and then we're coming out of emergency state of management. When going to these type of events, it's kind of just like a job fair. Someone's at that table, someone's at that table, someone's in that class, someone's in that class, and they may run all weekend. And one person can't be in 5 places at one time. We're gathering information from everywhere and touring other people's communities, admiring and astonishing what we would like ours to look like. Now, if someone just doesn't want to go, they don't have to go. That's on them. But we budget something every year to do these type of things, and we haven't gone anywhere. And we have a book that we need to update. And we need to do that, but I don't think all of that is necessary, but it's something that I think Commissioner Henry has brought up, because it's not this authority, but other boards, when they go places, they don't bring information back. I think that when we do, I do agree with that whatever session somebody goes into, that a presentation should be given to share that information. But just to hold somebody with the contract.
So I think you guys are somewhat agreeing. The only difference from what Mr. Hudson is saying is that you just kind of hold a person accountable. So they actually have to do it versus we assume the assumption is you'll do it anyway,
Yeah,
but you don't have to have that assumption. It's in writing that you will do it.
then you don't get to go in.
Well, if no one else is available, maybe you can do it, yeah. So if we can move on unless you needed to add anything further. Okay, so we're good. Yes, I think you guys are. Okay, so Teresa, you're good to review that, and
I guess it would be nice if there's an official motion of whether we're tabling this and reviewing that one and bringing it back, or whether we're just adding a follow-up to this.
we're going to table it until you can review what Mr. Hudson, presented back in, sounds like in October, and then we can bring it back to us so we can review the final copy.
It's been,
Are there any meetings that would hurt right now?
no,
I think we should just review, what's wrong with June? It's just 1 month from now.
No.
because I don't know if you guys keep up with stuff, but I do.
Okay, well, look,
There's some
enlighten us.
conferences going on, and we're missing them.
I thought I just.
I don't-
So, if
Try
a
to accommodate
conference, so
for
this is the new, this is something that we're presented with. If you and
But don't worry
Ms.
about it, because
Hug-
I will submit my check.
if you and Ms. Hug had
To the
already
board.
went, clearly there was some policy if you guys had went in the past. That would
Well,
be,
no, we just had somebody that just made our arrangements and gave us a stipend to, it was easy.
so can you tell us the deadline to apply for this conference?
Well, actually, it's going on right now, this weekend, but I'm
Well,
just
that
saying,
would-
but there's more right behind it.
So,
But I asked that question, last month before,
yes,
knowing that something was coming up.
Reverend Childs, please.
Is there some type of schedule for those various seminars or meetings for the year 2024?
That I don't know, Sharice, do you know that there's a schedule? Or would I just, we can Google it? or
I
is it
guess it
something-
depends. If you're talking about a specific set of, events that has a regular schedule, there may be, but I guess I looked at this as different things that might come up, National Brownfields Conference, for example, that's not something that meets monthly. It meets once a year, once every 2 years. It kind of depends. But there could be some other, like a Justice 40 conference or something.
We need to be aware of those various conferences. If it's a year or 2 years, we need to know if it's this year, what date, that we can be able to plan, go,
I
get
guess
that information and bring it back and
Yes.
present.
So can we request those two things? So can we request, so for today, table it, and then once you review the document Mr. Hudson created, if we can integrate it and bring that for next month? And then if possible, could you bring a schedule? And that way everybody can take it away and look at it and we can see who's available or who would like to go. Is that something that you could do?
Well, I guess I would need clarification on what types of events. I mean, I took this as the board members have their own events they're interested in and they're bringing them to the board for consideration. So if there's a specific group you want me to look for, I can absolutely look up their schedule, but
Okay, so I understand how you took it, but it sounds like there was a little bit of confusion. So I'm gonna go ahead and let Mr. Hudson speak, then I'll give some ideas. Mr. Hudson?
Maybe it clears it up if we do just like what's being done now. Individuals have to take it upon themselves to
I'd rather not
identify
spend
the
my money.
conferences that are most,
That's,
appropriate
I mean,
for them to attend and-
if you Google it, I mean, you should be able to find it. So were you the main person really wanting to travel? Do you have anything specific?
No, but if
Commissioner
something comes
Adams?
up, I just like to be able to, and to have someone make those arrangements, period.
But remember, I want to follow back up to a previous conversation that we had. You still are gonna be making your own arrangements, just will be paid for. There's no travel agent, remember? We discussed that, maybe back when Mr. Hudson, brought it up. And I see, Mr. Little's,
I would just like to suggest that there be at least two parts to the process. One, a review and approval of what type of conference you're talking about going to and its relevance to what you're doing here. We shouldn't be spending money going to a mosquito and katydids conference. It should have something to do with what we're about.
Right.
And there should also be some limitations on how many people are going at one time to it.
Right.
We shouldn't look up and have 8 people traveling to a conference. But I think that would really be important, to make a complete policy and advance approval on it, not we go first and then come back and,
okay, Miguel, you can go ahead and have your turn, Miguel.
I just want to say I'm interested in going to those concerts, and I think it's going to come up in October for the national, I think.
Yeah, you know.
So it'd be me, Commissioner Allen, or whoever, I want to go as well.
The other one,
To the National Brownfield Conference?
Yeah.
Okay, Mark?
Madam Chair and members, just frame of reference, historically, when we become aware of a conference, whether it's at the national one that we're referring to, or whether it's a state and local type of a conference or workshop session, we generally have brought that to you in advance and said, this is coming up, and as many months in advance as we possibly can. And I suggest that will continue going forward. Unfortunately, there isn't that I'm aware of, at least, there isn't a site that we can go to that lists all of the different conferences. But when we become aware of them, we can certainly put that on the agenda item as an informational piece, and you guys can decide whether it's something you're interested in or not. And to Mr. Little's point, absolutely, the intent behind this policy, this brief but succinct policy, is that you have the ultimate approval. This body does. So whoever says that they want to go to a particular conference is going to have to compel the rest of you to say, makes sense to us. So I think the check and balance is already built into this. But we'll get that, make sure it's on your future agendas.
I think one of the things that we'll have to consider is consistency in coming to the meetings. I mean, you wouldn't want someone who comes here once every blue moon to go to a conference. So I think that we have to look at those type of things too, with who we're selecting to go.
So if I understand this body's will at this particular point, you're going to table this today, no action. It's going to go back to Teresa to incorporate some of the reporting interests and obligations that Mr. Hudson's policy had suggested, and it'll be brought back to you at your next meeting.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Second.
Okay.
We need to vote for that one.
Do we vote on a
I
table?
think technically you do need to vote to
Okay.
table something, yes.
Okay, so call for the question.
So who need a motion to
Make a
table?
motion to table.
Second.
Now call for the question.
Second,
Bringing back the next
Mr. Hudson.
period as we indicated.
correct.
Okay.
Childs,
Yes.
Chandler,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Kennard,
Yes.
Hudson.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Matters tabled till next month.
Third item on our under old business is Brownfield map and list of terminated Brownfield plans.
In your agenda, it says at the March regular meeting, I believe that was just last month at the April meeting. There was a request from member Chandler for a map of the Brownfield sites. That was just last month, correct? And then separately, there was a request from member Adams for a list of all the completed Brownfield plans. So those 3 plans are listed in here, as well as a map of the Brownfield sites.
Commissioner Adams.
Thank you. That was all of the, not Brownfield, well, I think I was specifically asking for a total list of the whole community, but those in particular from the one company out of Saginaw that did the last investigative work that was done, and that's been what, it cost 8-9 years.
Yes, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
She's referring to a company called AKT Peerless, who implemented the last EPA Brownfield assessment grant that this body received. And it was several years ago. They used those grant funds to go out and investigate sites of known or suspected contamination throughout the city. Just because a site was investigated doesn't mean, however, that it became part of your Brownfield plan. And I think that our understanding of your request was you wanted a map and a list of the Brownfield sites. And the map that is on the screen right now is included in your packets, was created by the GIS department over at Berrien County with their assistants. They took all the tax identification numbers and created this map. It has not been fully verified, so I'm not going to stand behind it and say it's 100% accurate at this point, but it's pretty close. And over the course of the next couple of months, we will make sure that this gets validated and it becomes a 100% accurate map. But it's a good start. And with respect, again, Madam Chair and members, to the list of terminated plans that I think Commissioner Adams had asked about, that's what Teresa is referring to, and I believe were included in the agenda packet. There were 3 plans that have completely seen their full life expectancy. We reimbursed the developer. We captured and used the captured funds for capitalizing your local remediation revolving fund, and those plans have been terminated. Meaning the properties have gone back onto the general tax roll, and the city and all the taxing jurisdictions are collecting their shares.
There's a list of those.
Yep, those are listed. They're commonly referred to as the City of Benton Harbor, Gaffville Oil Site, Atlantic Automotive, Hewitt Dental Clinic, and Integrity Design.
Oh, there's a list of them here.
The list is within the agenda.
I'll find it, okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Hudson.
Staff? Am I assuming, I just like to be clear, when we say brownfield sites, what are the parameters? What defines your brownfield site? Someone that is in an agreement with us to clean something up, or the fact that it has a property number in the city of Benton Harbor that's vacant how are we defining brownfield sites as it's listed here in this map?
If I may, this is a map of your current sites that are within a brownfield plan for this body. So I think your question is a good one. And unfortunately, or fortunately, it's not as simple as defining what is or what is not a brownfield site. Very broadly, federally speaking, contaminated property is a brownfield. But in Michigan, we have a much broader definition of that. For example, if something is blighted or functionally obsolete, a historic resource, it can be designated as eligible property under the Brownfield statute. But so it gets a little tricky even further now with amendments back in July where we can add housing property. Are we going to say every residential property is a brownfield? No. But can some of those properties be eligible for brownfield funding? Yes. Essentially, they're eligible property under the brownfield statute. So it gets a little tricky to say what is or what is not. Tell me every property within the city that is a brownfield. So this map is specifically the properties that are within brownfield plans.
Your brownfield plan. And let me piggyback, if I may, Mr. Hudson, that are in your brownfield plan. Everything that you see on the screen there, at least was at one time included within a brownfield plan that this body approved or your predecessors approved. A site can be as simple as one parcel with one tax ID number. But as you can see from this map, those are some pretty large blocks of property, multiple parcels, each having their own distinct tax identification number that have been lumped into this one area that we're calling a site. Okay? So once again, a site can be one parcel or it can be 50 contiguous parcels.
And we did this.
We did
Was
this.
this brownfield committee?
Yes, sir.
Okay, no problem. So it's those sites that have been designated by this brownfield board as having capacity to be cleaned up and brought back onto the tax roll.
Yes, sir.
Okay, no problem. I'm clear now.
And I gotta say this body did that because they wanted to make sure that properties were redevelopment ready to the extent they could. In some instances, a developer stepped forward and said, I'd like you to include these properties because I'd like to redevelop them. In other cases, this body just looked at the property and said, it has redevelopment potential. If we can get all this administrative stuff out of the way early on, a developer doesn't have to go through that. All a developer has to do is come knock on our door, make it easier. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Chandler?
I have a question based on what you said, site includes contiguous. Is that a requirement in each plan that the properties be contiguous? Can they be one over here, one over there, one somewhere else? And then incorporated into a plan?
If I may, there's two different, you can have both scenarios.
Okay.
But every property that's included in a brownfield plan needs to be determined to be eligible property. Those basis of eligibility could be contamination, it could be blighted, functionally obsolete, historic resource, or housing. If you have an adjacent and contiguous parcel, that can meet the definition. Now you can have a brownfield plan, which is called a scattered site. And in a scattered site, every property meets the definition, but they're not necessarily adjacent and contiguous. But the only way you can add another parcel right next door, if it doesn't meet eligibility right on its own, is if it's immediately adjacent and contiguous to a piece of property that does.
Gotcha. And I asked that with what's on our agenda in mind, because their properties are not.
Right, so
Yeah,
you can,
not
you can
contiguous.
absolutely have a scattered site brownfield plan.
Mr. Little?
Yes, I'd like to kind of piggyback on this too. I think this is a good discussion, but it's important that we all understand that the brownfield process, it's a tool in our overall economic development planning and direction. I mentioned that because we just completed a master plan that was approved and finalized in November. We're getting ready to begin doing rezoning to comport with that master plan. In addition, there are other things that are going on that may impact various, including some of these areas. You probably recall some time ago, there were harbor study activities going on, and right now it's beginning to be reactivated about the harbor consortium. And that can have an impact too, as well as the planning commission process. That's why I emphasize the importance of these things coordinating and being integrated. You don't want to have somebody come to you and push a brownfield plan and you act on it and find out that what they're talking about doing, you're not going to even allow it in terms of zoning and that kind of thing. So it's really important that we work closely together on these things to make all of these pieces fit together to do what we're ultimately about doing. And again, understanding that the economic development strategy for the city is about increasing tax base, increasing population, adding to the desirability of the city overall.
Commissioner Adams.
I'd just like to concur with Mr. Little as Economic Development Co-Chair and Legislative Chair. And Brownfield Authority Board member since 2002. Probably missed what, probably 3 meetings? Anyway, it's been wonderful in knowing these things and how they work together because of exactly what he just said, the things that we need to keep in mind. And I just had the pleasure of sitting on and joining the Planning and Zoning Committee, which will be very helpful. So thank you. Thank you. Education, everything working together for the good of the growth of and on.
Are there any further comments from the board? Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and move on to new business.
Was there an action that we just took on that?
No
No
action.
action needed.
Okay, just an update. Okay.
New business, we have an application from King's Courthouse and Redevelopment.
Yes, so Ms. Keena King is here. I'll ask her to come up and present her project, but she's been at the last few meetings and has spoke during public comment last month. Chair Hull did direct myself to meet with Ms. King and help her fill out the project application. So essentially, this what's on the agenda right now is consideration of the application, and the first step would be deciding if you want to support the project, and then we can talk about, you know, what type of support might look like if the board chooses to accept the application. So, Ms. King?
Hello. So my name is Keena King, and I am the co-owner of KB Ventures. And that is a business that me and my brother own. We have purchased multiple projects within the city. I'm a resident of Benton Harbor, born and raised here, have worked throughout the community for the last 30 years, working to help to improve the lives of members of this community. I have purchased multiple units, and I can just start listing the units that I have. 705 East High Street, which is a multi-unit. 711 East High Street, that's just a lot, and I'm looking to build on that. 362 High Street, that is a 4-unit, 2 bedrooms. 368 High Street, and I'm in the process of closing on that property. Also, 1064 Ogden, which is a 2-bedroom house, single-family home. And then also 536 Colfax, which is another multi-unit home. And I'm coming to Brownfield to see if I can seek support with helping me to develop some of these properties as far as renovations on the properties. I have started work. I have my contractor here with me today that has been providing the rehab with my units on the property located at 705 High Street. I have already, again, secured that property. I have put in new roof, new windows in that unit. The property that's located at 1064 Ogden, new roof has been done on that. Also, let me back up a little bit. The property that's on 705 High Street, there has been some additional work that has been done, and I know that my contractor, if it's okay, if he can come up and speak to what has been done to that property, because he is a contractor, and I know there has been some plumbing things that has happened, but I am coming to Brownfield, again, just seeking some support with these projects that I have going on to help. I'm using a local contractor with the work that's happening with the projects. And so you talk about development within this community. I have taken the initiative myself along with my brother, and we're really vested in this community. My parents worked and retired in this community. I'm currently employed in this community. I have a lot of stakes in the ground here, and I'm really seeking some additional support from Brownfield to help me with the development of the projects that I have going on.
Madam Chair.
I know your contract is coming, but I think I'm missing something. Where is are you saying it's contamination or what, where is the?
Eligibility?
Yeah, where, am I missing that? Where's the contamination or
It's
the testing?
It's housing property.
Oh, the new one.
The
Okay.
new Brownfield Incentive for
Okay.
Housing Development is what I'm coming.
Okay, I'm Mr. Hudson.
I was going to ask specifically the same question, and again, thanks, Ms. King. We need entrepreneurs and developers that are willing to put the money where their mouth is. And I would encourage, you just heard previously a short description of those eligible costs that Brownfield can actually support. Are you aware of what they are specifically as to how they fit into your development plans? And the reason I ask that is that I'm not sure that sounds like the development support that you're looking for may not be eligible costs. So we need to try to figure out how they're fundable, under this brownfield.
So the infrastructure improvements that support housing, qualified rehabilitation of rental units, blighted or obsolete rental units, fall, those properties that I have, some of those, specifically the property located at 362 High Street, along with 368 High Street falls into those categories. Also, the property 368, there is mold that's in that unit. I don't know to what degree, but again, based on the new Brownfield incentive for housing development, the projects that I have and I've been working on falls into those categories.
What I'd like to see is the schedule that we can move forward with in terms of speaking of the specificities of your project. Because at this point, I mean, they clearly have property numbers within the city of Benton Harbor. So they're eligible. It's about finding out what it is that we can do here in specificity in terms of dollars and cents. So I think everybody here would be in agreement with your efforts. Let's move forward and start getting some numbers together and getting them to staff and bring them here for this board to review and move on.
I don't see 368 on here, but Commissioner Adams has a comment. It's just not in the application yet.
Yeah, you mentioned that,
Okay,
but it's
well.
not printed in here. Is that an additional
So-
property?
So that's,
And many of you,
Were you gonna?
no, go ahead.
Okay.
many of you may not remember, Mark may not even remember, but one of the addresses of 536 Colfax is a property that's being held up in the courts. The property is in a litigation. It's actually my property. And I'm asking that it be removed from, any discussion.
Word of inclusion.
You own it?
So I have paperwork. I went through a title company. I purchased, myself and my brother, we purchased a property, 536 Colfax, that Commissioner is speaking on. That property has been purchased through First American Title Company. Appraisal was done on that property, and I have documentation here to present that that property has been purchased. And there was I spoke with Teresa about the potential, if this came up during this meeting, that I guess Ms. Adams' husband was the owner, but the property was sold and appraisal had to be done. And myself and my brother, we have purchased the property, and the property is ours legally.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes.
There's a judgment.
Okay. I don't know about all
Right.
this.
Order, Madam Chair.
Needs to be removed.
So what I need to happen, because I don't, and I'm not gonna pretend to be an expert, Teresa, do you know anything about this, or I don't know?
Well,
This is
I'll
not
just say
court-
that,
No, it's
A
not.
board of litigation.
Thank you, but
We cannot.
you are talking out of turn, can we
No,
allow
we
Teresa to
wish-
finish, please?
if a property is currently in litigation, then it would be appropriate for this board not to take action on that. If it is not currently in litigation and anyone on the board has a personal interest in it, they could excuse themselves from that portion of the vote. I can't speak to whether the property is or is not in fact in litigation. According to Ms. King, she has documentation, it's been purchased.
And so can I also share, so with that particular property, as recent as I guess maybe a couple weeks ago, had a contractor to meet my brother over at the property to look at renovations happening, moving forward renovations. And Miss Adams did, I guess, have a conversation with my brother. During that time, a police was called to the property, and a police report has been filed and made with Benton Harbor Police Department in regards to one of the requests was the police did ask that we not go to the property unless they had documentation. So documentation was brought to the Benton Harbor Police Department, showing that we are the owners, and not only are we the only owners, but because we did not want to have any problems. I've worked with Ms. Adams in this community in different capacities.
Point
But
of order.
the police, there is a police report that has been filed in
They
the
have
property.
judges
Okay.
from the court system too.
Okay, so
So,
that'll have to of
so
course be settled.
yes,
But to
absolutely.
move on
Exactly.
from that, Therese, so I have up our, notes from last month where we were discussing the new housing. I don't feel confident I know enough about it. Can you shed some light on, based on what Mrs. King has said? Like, is there a limit on how much rehab? I'm just not sure. So
Sure.
based on, I know you've been working with her, so you know all the ins and outs. So can you give your opinion on what the Brownfield can do? And this is regardless of if 536 is
Right, right.
included or not. Let's just get some general information.
Sure, I appreciate that. And it could be confusing for this board as it was for Ms. King. You know, is there a specific what you can and can't do? And as we've had education over the last couple months, there are new housing eligible activities that were not previously available. So there are things like infrastructure and site development costs that help support housing that's now eligible. There's rehab for qualified housing that's now eligible. Acquisition is now eligible for qualified housing. So there, if this board chooses to support, I can certainly work with Ms. King to decide what those are. Something that I was not comfortable saying the board would or would not approve up front, and I would need some direction from the board, is typically the most common tool that is available to a Brownfield Redevelopment Authority would be a Brownfield plan. And in a Brownfield plan, you would put these things in. It needs local concurrence in addition to support from this body, and that would be a reimbursement process. Also, which is eligible, you could pay directly for some of these rehab costs, but that's not something this board has done in the past. So you would have to decide if that's something you would consider. So there's different types of incentives that may be available that are in line with statute that could support the project.
Mr. Little, you had,
Okay.
oh, okay, I don't know who was first. I'm not
I
gonna
had my hand up there, my arm is getting kind of sore. But, Ms. King,
Yes, correct.
Ms. King, I haven't ran into too many of, minority female that has worked to the extent of what she has going. And this has been a big conversation in the city of Benton Harbor of redeveloping and have affordable housing and things of that sort for the people here in the city. I think under what she has just spoke about, she has laid out a plan as according to what Benton Harbor was trying to put forward. It seems like she fit that description. Her being a minority and from the city and have ties here, it's more than reasonable, seemed like that we would go to every extent to try to support this woman here that's coming forth as we would any other woman that's been in our community, a minority for one thing, and it seems that she has bought the property. So we're not asking to have her to put in financially to buy the property. What she was saying that the support in the redevelopment of the cleanup or the fix up. And I know that we've been helping other entities, other companies that come forth and ask for that. So I said, why not her? Why should we block anything? We should open up every way that we can to try to work with her redeveloping the properties for people to have a safe, comfortable, affordable. And I suppose do you have any kind of pictures to show us what you have done so far, or
I
so that
think,
we can have a view of what she's doing? Because sometimes people come to you with things and, you know, they talk about slumlords, things of that sort. We want to see what her projects look like and her developing of it. So we need to get some teeth in it so that we can be on point and know what we're working with. Am I right? Am I right? We should know what we're working with. So I said, let's not work with her because she is a Black woman from this community, but because she's got all of the things in line and set there. But we should make every effort like we would anybody else to work with her and make sure that she succeeds in her efforts for bringing forth these programs as to what Ben Howard's been talking about all the time, is having affordable housing for people, and they're talking about developing. I know Mr. Little was saying that they had a lot of properties that they wanted to get moving in the month of June. And I know that there's got to be facts and figures there, but she's already advanced beyond that and gotten started. So I'm saying, why not with Brownfield, not block her? I mean, for what reason? Let's work with her and see what she can bring forth to make us feel really comfortable that we got someone in place that is following through and putting something like this together so that we can feel proud of our community.
Thank you. So next we have Mr. Hudson.
I think that we should go back to the beginning. Ms. King, it's a pleasure to have you.
Yes.
Please submit your documentation to the staff with the schedules and the numbers. Let us see how we can help you with those eligible costs. Our due diligence, that's on us. So you don't even need to speak to that. I think at this point, where we need to have something coming to this table, okay? Because I don't see any reason you have property numbers, it fits within eligible costs. We're not going to lose any money. You know that, it's not our money, we're just stewards. So it seems like a great deal to me.
Did you give some of those numbers?
Okay, so I'm gonna move on to
in the
Ms.
application?
Commissioner Adams.
Thank you, I'm here.
No, do you want to
And
speak to a
Just
specific
for
part of the
clarity,
application?
I've
He's asking for
brought this
numbers.
young woman for, been informing her for years, seeking help,
Great.
okay? But also being on other boards and knowing and actually lobbying the federal government for exactly what's coming down the pipeline. We've been purchasing properties through planned economic development to put our children to work that they may learn a skill, utilizing some of these dollars to lay the infrastructure on some of these tax magnitude lots to build, to add to our tax base. That's still a
Exactly what
plan.
she's doing.
That's still a plan.
I think it's great.
Yes,
Let's do what we can to support it.
Okay, can we
it's
stay in
broad.
order? So I'm sorry.
She already got.
Okay. Next is Mr. Little, please.
I think if we can develop this tool in such a way that it can be used to do some of this kind of thing, it could be good, it could be positive. But I think before we go down this road, the city would like to see this body develop a process and requirements that have to be met in order to do this, so that we treat each request in a similar manner. First of all, this entity should not get into 100% financing of anything. There needs to be an equity requirement. There needs to be a plan with cost. There needs to be some review and sign off from the building department that in fact it's something that can be permitted and so forth. There needs to be some outline in addition to minimum equity requirements for a project.
But Mr. Little, before we should that is due diligence. Why are we sitting here talking about
He has
that?
the floor.
it's like we're wasting
He has
time.
the floor.
I mean, but he's sitting here lecturing us on due diligence.
Okay, well,
That's
you
all
allow
supposed to
the
be
meeting
part
to run in
of the
order, Mr.
process.
Hudson.
Who?
Mr. Little,
Waste
please
of time.
continue.
Well, I certainly would agree that it is due diligence,
That's
and that's
correct.
what we're asking, that be done. But these requirements need to be outlined in advance. So
Okay.
when you start to act on a project, all of this stuff is in place. The city's gone through the exercise some years ago with CDBG of loaning some money to somebody for doing a business. And
Okay, we don't need to issue
So-
that.
I'm gonna go ahead and speak since I haven't spoke on this. Or if I did, I'm speaking again here. So I'm looking at what we were presented with last month, and that was with the housing. And I will agree with what I think Ms. Little was saying, because it's so new, we don't really have a process. And we must have some kind of process that we can tell people to go through. So I see it on here, I see the slide, I have it up on my phone, but we don't personally in our Brownfield have a process. So I do think we need to quickly create something. And then, at least if we had that, we would be able to give her direction on what exactly to do. I think
Thank you.
Adams was next, and then I'll
Because
get you.
this is
And
a
then I'll get
process that I've asked for years. Because I know if we could have for a long time loaned out funding to people in the community for low interest rates. Now, Mr. Little touched base on something, and I want to ask him because some of those block grant dollars can be utilized for the same thing. And not only that, is there a process, because we got some opera funds and we needed the same type of process for those funds for people in the community? Do we have it?
Can we get the three? Okay, I want to stop here and get the answers. The first thing Commissioner Adams said is she said we have the ability to loan out money. The second thing is she said there's block grant funds and also ARPA. Did you say ARPA?
No, they gone.
Okay, well, okay. So can we get comments to her two comments? I don't want the public to get the wrong idea, or is this accurate? Do we have the ability to loan out money? And then Mr. Look, I think that would be Therese, if you're saying Brownfield, right?
Process.
And then, Mr. Little, if you can talk about block grant.
well, for one thing, the block grant funds are diminishing. We just got our allocation today, and it's considerably less than it was last year. Typically, what we're talking about, while some parts of it theoretically could be, with our set of circumstances, it's not likely.
So not
So
like.
yes, they can be used for it, or no, they cannot.
Under our circumstances, it's not likely.
Is there a process?
So basically, we're gonna have to move on. So block grant is not an option. What about the loan and Ms. Adams? Does anyone, Mark or Teresa, you know anything about loaning money at low interest rates?
So I don't know if this board has a policy with respect to loans, but Mark could probably provide some historical context with respect to development and reimbursement agreements. But absolutely, any type of project that you enter into for any type of support, you should have a development agreement in place so that clear expectations are met. If the conditions of how something is presented don't follow through, there could be repercussions. For example, if it's a direct cost you paid for.
Excuse me, at the other end of the table, can we give her some respect, Mr. Hudson? Thank you, I appreciate that. Please proceed.
Items that could be included in a development reimbursement could be, if this board supports a certain level of support and that development does not occur by a certain time frame, that this board would be reimbursed. Those are the types of things that you would want to have in place in that type of agreement so that both parties are clear what the expectation is. There's some follow through. Also, you would want to have some financial awareness that the project could succeed with what is planned.
No, we won't. We won't do that either this time. I'm sorry, Ms. Chandler, and then I'll get you, ma'am.
Okay.
I don't know whether, anything about all that. The thing is, it seems that don't we already have a process in place for doing this? And I understand that the housing part of it is rather new, but there still must be certain guidelines followed in order for that to be supported and funded, right? So I don't think that we should hold up her stuff because we're not prepared. And of course, yeah, we have to have a process. But and I understand it. But my question is, and we have to be clear on what's expected from both sides. Because you're coming asking for brownfield support. Is this going to be affordable housing? Is it going to be only Benton Harbor residents? Or, I mean, those kind of things I understand must be worked out. But I don't think we to hold her up months because we don't have a official process. I don't think.
You have to have a process.
We
No
do.
way to proceed with anything without a process.
We
So
do.
I don't know if I can agree
We
with
do. That's what
that.
we've been sending her through the process all the time. We told her to go. We told her where to go. We told her who to go to, and we knew what she was asking. And so now to say that, oh, we sent you the wrong way,
I don't think we should have.
we didn't, because we know what's
Yeah, they
required in the 381. We already know what we can and can't do. I mean, right? Don't we? So yeah, let's keep this moving, and then we can still do the process.
Ms. King, well, then I'll get Mr. Little.
Can I say, I do want to say, again, I have been in this community and I have worked in several different capacities. I have worked sometimes with I've seen Mr. Little in spaces where I have presented about some of the work that I've done in public health with some of the youth that I have worked with. Just from an awareness standpoint, just bringing him in, just wanted to share what I've been doing. When you guys talk about, and then I'm saying with Mrs. Adams, when you talk about development within this community and a process being put in place, and here I've been coming to the meetings and I have purchased properties out of my own account and started development on these properties. I have pictures where I can show, and with the development that has already happened, and to hear you guys, I get it, certain things need to be in place, but when you talk about a process, I'm wondering what has the process been for others that have came through the same door that I walked through, that have gotten funding and support that don't look like me. And I have stakes in this community, and I have done my due diligence as far as when you talk about having skin in the game. I have put my money on the line because I wanted to support this community. These projects that I'm speaking of is no more than 8 months from being complete. I came in today with my contractor. I have documentation showing here, standing before you, that I own these properties, that I have taken and done my due diligence to support you guys, to support us as a community. When you talk about redevelopment, when we talk about economic development within our community, I have already stepped up into the spaces that you guys are creating for others in this community. I've already done that on my own before I even walked into the door to ask for any assistance. And to leave out today with the possibility of not having or knowing that you guys are supporting. And when I say stakes in the ground in this community, you will not find anybody in this community that has not poured sweat and toil with trying to help Benton Harbor be developed.
Thank you. So I want to just say this, because I think there's a false narrative. There is a false narrative right now, and I want to put a nip in the bud. The false narrative is we're not trying to help a Black person. That's ridiculous. We're African American on this board. We want to help you. So I don't know who's twisting this around, but this false narrative will stop right now. It's no way we're saying anything to you because of your color. That's silly. We're African American. We want to go and do everything correctly. We don't want to just tell you something that's incorrect. We want to do it correctly, and we want to follow the proper procedures. One key thing you said, how do other people get help? We can easily tell you that. Teresa's for Mark, they're the experts. They know. So we can definitely do that and get you that information, but we do want to help you, and I don't want that to get spread around the community as a false narrative that you come to Benton Harbor and we've told you no, because no one has told you no.
And
I want to help.
And I did not say that. I'm expressing,
Okay.
with me talking, I'm expressing when you talk about, when I'm hearing to say like the process. What I'm saying is there has been other developers that have came in. And I get it, there will be some logistical things that need to be figured out as timelines, financial costs. But those are the same things the same courtesies that has been given to others that have came into this space. And so that's what I'm saying as,
Okay.
okay.
So I'm gonna
So
let Mr. Little chime in and then I'll get to the people down here if that's okay.
First off, there have been no other developers go through here with a housing project yet. And secondly, as I said, you've got to keep in mind, as Sam said, it is due diligence, but it needs to be put in place because this is a different program. And doing this on a smaller size is going to be decidedly different than trying to do a multi-million-dollar project otherwise. When it's all said and done, the bottom line of it is you've got to have a formidable plan that gets executed, that when it's finished has a higher taxable value than it did when you started, because that's how you're going to collect your money back to pay it back.
Okay, so I don't know who was first, but I'll go Mr. Hudson.
Look, and I will digress to say again, first of all, we don't need the litany and all of that. What we need is, as I said earlier, for you to come into this committee, submit your documents. I haven't seen one number. Don't talk to me about business without some numbers. We have to have those schedules and things, and from there, we'll be able to identify eligible costs. But all of this other talk, I don't know where we're going anywhere until we get that process in place, have something to be able to vote on.
And-
So all the rest to me is just kind of hyperbole.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying. That's why I submitted numbers in the application that I emailed to Teresa. And
Okay.
Do you have
Well,
financial numbers in here
Staff,
for redevelopment
Well-
costs?
let me see the schedules. Let's start with property one. That's what we should start talking about.
There's taxable values, but you don't have your redevelopment
Not
costs
in our
in there,
package,
correct?
but I wanna go to Mr.
Okay.
Kennard. Do you want a second
Yeah.
research and then Ms. Kennard
But
can
how are we,
Okay.
how are we moving past my point, which is if she has numbers on these projects that can be identified as eligible costs, then we should be trying to see how we can assist her.
Mr. Hudson, we weren't moving. I thought she needed a second to look. So I was saying Ms. Kennard could give her
Well,
comment.
she told me she had numbers, so I'm calling
Yeah.
her to that.
So yes, I emailed numbers I've been dealing with Teresa, and that's why I emailed numbers based on my proposed projects,
You have
dollar amount,
redevelopment numbers?
numbers.
I have this application.
Just a second, I can get my phone and read.
Okay,
Yeah, that's what we need.
so I'm gonna let Ms. Kennard go and then I'll go to Mark and Teresa. Ms. Kennard, do you wanna do your comments?
What I'm saying is, today, I'm an older woman, so I like to applaud when I see young women coming along and trying to do something to make things better in the community. And I see that this young lady that came before us, since I've been here for maybe 3 years, I haven't seen anyone come forth with as much detail of what she's got going. And I think I've seen, don't know how many developers come forth with their projects and things like that. And we voted that and not held back, because then we want our city to go forth. And we would like to go forth with people like her that come and not feel like she is pushed aside. I know we got to have facts and everything, but to give her a feel that she got some hope through the Brownfield. That's what we're here, to keep them motivated and encouraged and working every way we can to make sure things happen for her. So this is what I'm not bringing up the race issue or anything, but she's a female just like I am. And I'm glad to see a female stepping up in this capacity and move forward and doing some development too. So her being a part of this community, growing up in this community, it makes me feel good that she's ready to try to work and give back to the community.
Okay, so I have Mark next, please.
Thank you. Ms. King, as Mr. Little mentioned, this is the first. This would be the very first project in 28 years that is a housing project. It's because the rules changed recently. This is different than anything that we've done over 28 years. If you came down the pipeline with the same old type of project as just about every other developer has that you're referring to, it's streamlined. Everybody knows what to do and everybody knows what's eligible and how the payment and reimbursement process works. This is unique. And it's one of the reasons I'll add that I'm retiring and this lady is stepping in, just as a reminder, because this is a skill set that she and her firm have that I don't, and I have no interest in learning at this age. What I would suggest that you consider, and I think what Teresa would back me up on this, the reason that this application was brought to you is an awareness, number one, that you have somebody who's interested in participating in this new element of the Brownfield program. And it's going to take a little effort because it is the first one for Teresa to work with this developer or any developer that might be standing here with a housing project to get the first one lined up and to extract the information that's in the application. And Mr. Hudson, the information that is not in the application, but perhaps needs to be in future applications. And then bring this thing back before you and say, here are the numbers, here's what's being requested, here's what you can or cannot do pursuant to the new elements of the statute. But it's going to take a little bit of effort on this lady's part over here. And I don't think she wants to do that without your
She is
approval.
not the consultant to the developer. Okay?
She's your
The
consultant.
developer has the responsibility primary. Okay, so I don't see that as being a problem.
Okay, Therese, then Miguel.
I will just say we had several conversations. Ms. King absolutely was seeking clarification on what all needed to be in here. Did there need to be a specific request for a certain eligible activity? And I said, much to what Mark has alluded to, this is a new type of project. So it's not the type of thing where I can say, yes, request this phase 1 environmental site assessment. So I can absolutely work with her to determine certain eligible costs, but I would need a little direction. Is it the type of thing you might consider a brownfield plan? Can you work with her for the costs that would be eligible in a brownfield plan? Or is it the type of thing that you might consider paying some of these costs up front? I mean, I would need some direction.
Okay, so let me get the people on the board who needs this. Miguel, please.
Well, I think this is a good project, and you know she's the first. I think we should get her contact with Terry that we are going to help her for her to don't have to go out here thinking that we're not going to do nothing. And also, we all board members. I think we all want to vote for this. I think we all have that different view of the process. That's all.
And then, I don't know if it was first, I'm gonna go with Ms. Kennard.
Yes, the only thing that I'm seeing too, is not for us to drag our feet, you know, sometimes they come forth and it be years before. Sometimes they get any kind of answer and then it's, has made a change in this situation. So let's get on this and not drop the ball and helping her to get where she needs to get the support, put your ducks in line or whatever it takes. But we need to get on that and work with her diligently to get this going so that others will have a pattern to follow through. And if they want, as you were saying, to do the same situation.
Housing.
I think Mr. Hudson?
As long as we are not providing free consultancy service to Ms. King as a developer, I'm for it.
Where's our attorney?
Okay,
That's all you gotta do is get it together.
and then is there anyone else that had a comment that I maybe didn't see their hand?
I would like to hear from her contractor.
Oh, is that appropriate? Okay.
Yeah, I can give the scope. Hi, everyone. My name is Robert Holbrook. I live and work here in the city of Benton Harbor. I own Collective Renovations with my partner, Mona Lee. We're licensed and insured contractors. We're from the area. My parents own businesses here. She graduated just 3 years ago from Andrews University with a master's degree in architecture. And so we've done, I think, 87 projects between the city of Benton Harbor and St. Joe since we've started our company. Kind of speaking to the scope of Mrs. King's projects, they are numerous and they are big projects. 705 East High Street that we're working on right now was a property that has not had anyone living in it for about 10 years. That's a 4-unit that we're currently working on. We've replaced all the siding, all the doors, all the windows, as well as put on a new roof on it. It has gone through its rough-in inspections for its plumbing, and electrical will be started on that next week. That project will be done probably toward the end of this month, toward the middle of June. Her and her brother have funded that out of their own pocket. Then we have the other 2 properties on high streets. Both of those properties each are 4 units, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. So 8 units total in those 2 developments that they have under their belt. And then they've picked up, there's one on Ogden, there's one on Enders. Those 2 are single family homes, but they are actively renovating these homes out of their own pockets. There's new roofs that have been placed on these homes. And to speak to, I think there was a comment about a slumlord. And just to kind of give it to the Kings, like they didn't pick the prettiest houses on the block. These are like dilapidated, you know what I'm saying? Like some of them I'm just like, you know, this is going to cost a lot, you know, but, you know, with what they're trying to do with having the stakes in the community that they have is they're looking at these properties, having traveled past them for decades now and seeing no real economic development in these areas. So they're putting their money where their mouth is. We have numbers, just as Teresa and Mrs. King was saying, we didn't exactly know what numbers you guys wanted to submit. Oh yeah, 100%. So we have scoped on every single one of those numbers, quotes from like plumbers, electricians, all of those things. All of our ducks are in a row when it comes to that. And we would be more than happy to submit all of our numbers to you and the licenses and the documentation that those require. So with that being said, I've worked with her for about 4 months, 4 or 5 months now. And I don't know, you guys know my backstory, but I'm pretty picky. Of who I work with. Contracting was not my first profession. I'm a corporate consultant for sales teams. So like, that's what I do. I build sales teams for big corporations and their sales teams to sell online. So that's what I do as my normal 9-to-5 profession. And I bought a house on Pipestone right here. So I live here. I live here. My construction crews live on Division and Ogden, you know, so we are local, you know. So what happens to the city of Benton Harbor directly affects me as a property owner, as a business owner, and it also directly affects Mrs. King and her brother because they are also property owners and business owners in the community. So we're more than happy and willing to submit any type of documentation to work with whomever we need to work with. And I understand that this is a brand new process. It just kind of came out like a month ago or something like that. So there is no process, you know? So only thing we're asking is that Ms. King, we all are able to partner together to come up with a process so that the next person that walks through the door, like Mrs. King, there is a process for them to follow.
They've been walking.
Yeah.
Madam
All
Chair,
right, thank you.
Yeah.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Chandler, are you?
I
Oh, sorry,
don't sit
Reverend
through-
Giles.
I don't sit through this whole meeting.
Wow.
Now, and I understand that. My question is, who helps to develop the process?
Other properties?
No, the process of how you're gonna help you or fund it or whatever.
So,
Is it you?
No, Therese, yeah.
So part of the process, the first step was education, and that's why I have presented 2 forms of education for this board. So you have some reminders of those general Brownfield statute, what you can and cannot do as an authority. We expanded that specifically to the housing. Again, still high level, but just, you know, what can we can and not do so that you have that baseline education. You know, now it's looking like, well, what is that next step process of how you actually support developers? And I guess it would be my recommendation that you think about this in 2 steps. The first would be If you're in agreement, you want to support this project, but you're not sure what that support looks like, that the first step would be accepting the project application, which allows receipt of that $500 check that accounts for this time with my conversations with Ms. King, for these discussions outside of the meeting. And then the second step would be, what does that level of support look like? We might not be ready to make that decision today. We could talk about, what are the options? You could direct me to work in more detail with Ms. King of the financial costs. I think it definitely would be helpful for this board to understand what financing she has in place, whether that's personal financing, lending, or what have you, to make the project work. And if there is any sort of funding gap, or specifically, is there a financial need? I think that type of information would be helpful to the board.
Okay, I see a lot of hands. I'm gonna go
I'll be quick.
at Ms. Adams.
Teresa, have you ran across any grants that help with these endeavors that are new, whether they be federal or state?
I'm not personally aware of a current new grant. I mean, this housing incentive is a new tool because
I know
housing
it
is
came
a
out
need
last year.
across
Yeah.
the state. I mean, that's why this tool was put in place.
Yeah.
And some people question, why it went in the Brownfield statute. I can't speak for state legislature, but this is how they chose to make a tool available. So adding housing to the Brownfield plan is the newest tool that I am familiar with. There are some other programs that we've already alluded to, like CDBG funds. Mr. Little could speak to any other programs the city may have. It sounds like those funding sources are diminishing in the city's capacity. So for this board, what you should consider are those tools that you have the authority to enact.
Okay, Mr. Hudson.
Thank you, Mayor.
I would have said.
Reverend Childs.
Congratulations.
I'll say for the fourth time, bring the schedules, let's get some eligible costs, and then maybe we as a board might want to meet to start talking about what we think should be in an agreement,
Yeah,
because this isn't a giveaway or a grant, it's business. That's why I said until we get some numbers out here, we just wasting time.
Yeah.
And then we will make an agreement that is in consort with the board, but we're not here to lose money. We're not a profit-making institution. But I think we can help you.
Okay, and I think Ms. Kennard was
Let's
next.
leave it at that.
Were you saying that, we have to come at some point in time to vote yes on working with it, or is it something we have to sign that we're in favor of going forth with her
You shouldn't
project?
have to
Once
sign
they-
anything.
Vote, I heard her say something about an application or something.
Oh, yes, you should be submitting an application.
Yes.
Give us the data to start reviewing.
Yes,
Okay,
but
so let's go ahead, if we can just answer that first question. So Therese did say we have to accept the application. So did you have additional comments, Ms. Kennard, or did you want us to?
no, that's it.
Okay, so
How
I'm
do
going
we get this
Mr.
accept application? Anybody that
Vote,
comes and
vote.
puts one on the table,
without
how
plan.
do we reject somebody's application?
Okay, thank you.
Talk about that.
Mr. Little, please.
In response to the question that Reverend asked, I will volunteer to work with Teresa in putting together the scheduling process.
Okay, and then was there other comments? I don't want to miss anyone again. Okay,
I-
sorry.
I ain't
Ms.
gonna say
Adams
that.
had
I'm
another
I'm
comment.
not gonna say a word. I'm gonna let y'all do what you doing.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So today, can we go ahead and say we gonna accept her application and leave this process going?
Where do we get this accepting applications from?
Because Therese just said that. The application is in your packet.
Anybody that comes to you with an application, if it's on a piece of property that has a property number in the city of Ben Harbor, we should be taking it.
Okay, well, last month there was an application. The board was not ready to take action on it, so that check has not been accepted. So the only way that we can accept payment is if there's formal action by the board to accept an
And
application.
that's what we're gonna do right now without further ado, unless someone else has another comment.
Yeah, I mean, do we accept the application itself without a plan?
You can make your motion very
The first step.
specific.
Okay, because she gets to, I'm asking for clarity, may I please? Okay, even upon acceptance of it, whether the plan goes through or not, she gets that back, if not though, right?
No,
No.
that $500 counts for working through the application and initials.
So I'm gonna make a motion that
I'll
we
second.
accept the application from Ms. King. Ms. King. And someone I think already seconded, I heard, but I don't know who.
Hudson.
Amendment? Well, we should accept all applications that come.
Well, that's
through
neither
these
here nor
offices.
there. Can we just take care of the matter
I
at
don't
hand?
understand that.
Okay, so we can call for the question.
Motion by Warren, seconded by Hudson to accept the application. Chandler,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Adams.
I'll be voting no due to conflict of interest.
You could abstain or you can vote no. That's your
I vote
choice.
no,
Okay.
due to a conflict of interest.
Kennard,
Yes.
Hudson,
Yes.
Childs.
Yes.
Motion carries, Madam Chair.
Motion to adjourn?
Well, do we want to skip member comments?
Yeah.
Is there any further direction to authorize me to
There
work
should
with
be.
Mr. Little?
Yes, yes, thank you. So Mr. Little did agree to work with Therese on a process, and we really need that. So if Mr. Little is okay with that, and if everyone else is okay with it, I would think we should, but I see that you have your hand up, Miguel.
So Mr. Little work with her with a process, then they gonna present the process to her and we gonna agree it will go.
I think that would be the perfect plan.
Okay.
If you have something, Miss Ivy,
No, I'm not keep my comments. No.
because at that point, we can give input as well.
I'm just curious as to, we pay our consultant and it's by the hour, by the half an hour. I mean, are
That's
we
why
paying
she's not
her
working for
to
it.
work with Mr. Little? I thought there was
What
a
if
purpose
we-
he agreed to work with her.
We would pay, I would say we would pay the consultant because she's using her time.
No. We don't pay consultants to work
We
with.
would have, we're opening up a door
It's not a
to help
developer, Mr.
everybody.
Lo-
We would be opening up a door to help everybody else that comes through that door with their process.
It's unconscionable. Mr. Little has agreed. He is a city employee. He has the knowledge. He has agreed to work with her. I think it's perfect.
Which is what I had already said.
Yes.
The comment Ms. Adams is just asking about his salary, and, or should we
No,
pay the
I-
consultant? And
We
my
already
comment,
pay her, but are we paying extra is the question.
she's using her hours, so.
Exactly, so
Hold on. That is what I'm against. She's not billing us to consult Ms. Higgins.
No, we're
Any
not
of
talking
my
about Ms.
time
King.
on behalf of this authority is billed to this authority.
That's why I said.
We're specifically referring to the process with Mr. Little.
He's already an employee, Mr. Little.
I just don't want her to come submit and bill next month talking about the hours she spent
spent with Mr.
consulting Ms. King. Ms. King is a private developer. And Mr. Little has agreed to help her, so that's not
No,
expensive.
no,
It's
I think there's some confusion. Maybe Mr. Little will clarify. If everyone could listen.
Yes, what I'm proposing here that I work with her on is not for a specific individual client. It's for the board to have a process that standardizes what you want to receive from an applicant, what your requirements are and that type of thing. And in the end, and let me say this is very, very important because you're going to have projects come through from major developers that where all of the performers and pre-appraisals and post-appraisal, all of that stuff is in the package. You're gonna also need to, if we're going to respond to small developers or individuals, a process for them that has certain minimal requirements, but not as onerous as a larger project. And we just want to make certain that everything is there. I don't want to be in a position where something goes all the way through the board process and my inspections department and code enforcement come and say, that can't go anywhere. You know, I don't want to, that's why I say, let's do these things in steps.
So
and
the
get it
time
done right.
the city want to
She
give
has an
to.
architect right there. They are
Okay,
not
so-
going to engage.
So we're gonna move on to
Project
Ms. Candler.
That doesn't have occupancy.
You have the floor, Ms. Candler.
I don't,
Jesus Christ.
help me if I'm off here, but this thing wasn't created without its own requirements, was it?
Yes,
I mean,
it was.
The state
Yeah, we
has
have-
Yes, it
stated
was.
So the state doesn't say that you have to present this or that we cover for housing. Here's what we cover. We cover blight, we cover this, we cover that, we cover something else, right?
Yes, but
Right,
that's
it's
a
telling us-
detail of the process.
Yeah, that's what we have to do in our Brownfield.
So when you say process, what is it that you're talking about that we need to do before she goes forward? What, I don't understand then.
So,
Out to the property,
plan.
a plan for, completion. Ideally, some assessment of value at the beginning of what the result's going to be and value when it's completed. Where you can see the taxes being increased,
I
for
should
you to
say
collect
that.
your money back.
I am.
It sounds like you want to establish requirements, but I don't know.
Okay,
just,
So-
let's let her finish, please.
It sounds like you want to establish requirements as opposed to, I mean, you keep saying that there has to be a process. I kind of got in my mind, you're saying, okay, here's on paper that we could give to some small developer to say, here's what you have to do to get to here. And here's what we want from you to see that you're gonna end up there. And I can't. The plan itself, the 381 or whatever it is, tells us what we're looking for, right? Does it tell us? Am I wrong here? I don't, and so why can't we just move? And as, if what you're saying, we need something in writing, as we go, we'll do that, because as you said, it's the first time for us all, right? For her too, for me, so.
I think there's a piece that you're missing, and maybe
I
Therese
see, I'm
can
trying
chime
to get some
in.
clarity.
No one is telling Ms. King to stop and do nothing. Ms. King can carry on about her business and we can do reimbursement. So I guess I'm not understanding why you keep making it seem like we're making her stop.
That's
Because
because
no one is saying that. Unless reimbursement is an option. Can you speak to that, Ms. Therese?
So right now, my understanding is this board has accepted the application, which means you want to support the project in some capacity.
Yes.
What that support looks like has not been decided yet. Separately, sounds like there will be meetings between Mr. Little and myself to develop a process of evaluating these types of projects. The third piece is what the level of support looks like for Ms. King. So I don't know if we want to evaluate the process before that can be made. If you want to say, you know what, we're going to put a brownfield plan in place, that's what we're going to consider, then it's very easy for me to work with Ms. King and say, what are your eligible costs that could be reimbursed in a brownfield plan? But there's different types of incentives you could do. Yes, Ms. Chandler, you are correct that Act 381 is very specific about what types of activities are allowable in Act 381. I think a process is a different criteria of how you evaluate those.
Collect the information
So we have Ms.
necessary
Adams.
okay.
to
Adams next.
substantiate.
So when I introduced this, it came from sitting on MML, State of Michigan Committee, putting together legislation and letting them know that it's not fair, that we should be able to utilize some of these funds for housing development. Especially with Ben, I'm looking away, okay, it's happened. And when I brought this forth, I was only looking at the federal portion, because it's much larger. And it has to do with some of the Justice 40 initiatives. So my question became to Mark as well as you, Ms. Teresa, was, are we dealing with state or federal?
Right now, we're looking at what this board can do, which is not utilize federal funding because you don't have any federal grants or loans in place. What this board has in authority would be a brownfield plan, which utilizes local and in some cases, state millages, or within your LBRF fund that you have, you could choose to directly pay for those. If you choose to directly pay for them, there absolutely should be some criteria for when you would choose to pay for those. As Mr. Hudson has alluded to, you know, you're not in the business of just giving out free money. You want to create a sustainable program. You want to see that developments will in fact move forward. So that usually does require certain criteria before that type of incentive would be utilized. In general, the most common tool you're evaluating is a brownfield plan, which is considering local and in sometimes state tax millages.
Okay. Do we have any other questions or comments? And then everyone is okay with skipping?
One question.
Okay, Ms. Chandler.
Is there, you said that if we're going to write a plan, what would be the other option again, if not a brownfield plan? In this case?
Paying for costs directly if they are eligible activities within Act 381.
So,
Okay, is there more people? Okay.
so to answer my question, so we will be going by the Act 381 if we choose to pay for it directly, you said, right? Correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the
You
question?
say if we go by Act 381, if we want to pay directly, there already a plan in place if we do it that way.
So every kind of support that this board evaluates needs to be consistent with Act 381.
Okay. Any other comments? No? Okay. Ms. King, did you have any final comments?
So I do want to ask, because when you talk about federal, that is something that's totally,
Just proceed.
Google.
No, please proceed with your comment.
Google.
so the, when you talk about like the federal, is that something, that the Brownfield has not done any work with, any federal grants or dollars in regards to any of the development?
To my understanding, no, but Teresa, do you want to clarify that?
Well, I mean, I think Mr. Florian alluded to a previous EPA assessment grant. So it sounds like this board has had federal funds available in the past. You do not currently. You can absolutely consider applying for an example, an EPA assessment grant. It's a long process. If we wanted to do that, I recommend having, you know, maybe some representatives of the board work with my firm and Mr. Little to evaluate, you know, what we would need to do to apply for those funds. But that's something that you could look at in the future. It's not a quick, you do it, you have to wait until grant applications open up, which I believe are in the fall.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and that's it. So I'm done. Just thank everyone for their time and allowing me to come forth today. So I appreciate everyone. So thank you very much.
All right. If there's nothing further, no member comments, does anyone want to?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Call for
Do I
the
present today?
Yes.
Sounds unanimous. Clark,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Kennard,
Yes.
Hudson,
Yes.
Childs. I think that's going to be a yes.
Yep.
Chandler,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
motion carries.
This is just a lot.